This is designing a kick-ass culture, and it's our goal today to really equip you with some actionable steps and frameworks, and really give you a picture of how we view hiring the right people, um, building a culture inside of your company, what that looks like, some of the tools and techniques that we use, and all that. And I'm hoping that it kind of gives you something to take away and chew on in your own culture, or your own companies that you've been started. So first of all, Zach and I will do some introductions here, and then we'll get started. But I'm Eric Verbancourt. I'm the partner and COO here at Headway. Really, my job involves all things operations, so HR, finance, and ultimately like the continuity and cohesion of all of our teams here at Headway, how we collaborate and work together for our client projects. How that involves our leadership teams, and what that looks like is generally my role. My background is in engineering, so software development. That's what I did for about a decade and a half before ultimately really transitioning more into this HR operations type role. So with that, I'll hand it over to Zach, and he can introduce himself.
Hey, I'm Zach. I'm actually in Nashville, Tennessee today. I'm so excited to be with you all virtually, and big fan of what's going on up there in Wisconsin, and have known Eric and John and the team at Headway and Andrew for quite a while. I am the founder of a company called The Intention Collective, and we help grow and scale companies, from startups, all the way to enterprise level companies, and really with the idea that you can grow and scale a healthy company, that it really starts with purpose and meaning. And excellence in our work, and culture obviously is a huge piece of that. So something I'm very passionate about. And I love getting to do this talk with Eric, just because I think that they've really put this to action at Headway. So excited to jump in with you all today.
Great. Thanks, Zach. All right, so the first thing that we want to talk about really is hiring the right people. We've all heard all the things around hiring the wrong person, and the time, the attention, the negative impacts on a team, and what that can look like. And I want to start out first with really what are the attributes, or things that we're looking for here. And when it comes to hiring the right people, I think as a company, what we need to do is really create some lenses, like how do we view the hiring process. And I'm going to get into a lot of those different details, but how we view that. And we need to look through a specific lens to really make sure that we find the right people for our teams that are going to be good fits. One of the things that's really stuck with us, that's formed an initial lens, is a book by Patrick Lencioni called The Ideal Team Player. I don't know if anyone's heard of that. He's also written another book called, well, he's written many books, but another book that we've leveraged quite a bit too, called The Five Dysfunctions of a Team. If you haven't read that, I'd highly recommend it. But really, this book aims to give you a rubric for identifying what is a team, what is the ideal team player, what are the things that we should be looking for. And essentially, it establishes a foundation that you build upon with your company's core values. And Zach and I are going to get into company core values here as a part of this. But what are the things that we look for? What are the foundations being set? And there's this model, of really three virtues: humble, hungry, and smart. In this book, Patrick really advocates, that it's really hard, or it's even impossible to build a cohesive team, and I would argue a high performing team, without each member of your team really living into and up to being humble, hungry, and smart. And the big takeaway here, though, is obviously we're talking about hiring, is it's building a team. We're most always not going to build something great on our own. We need to surround ourselves with great people that we can count on, and people that instill confidence in those around them. And this really always brings me back to kind of a saying, and it's been attributed to many different things in the past if you look it up, that's really stuck with me, with Headway, since the beginning, is if you want to go fast, you go alone. If you want to go far, you go together. And it kind of bring in this mindset of surrounding yourself with people, kind of the mindset of this mutually beneficial place cascades through kind of what I'm going to get into next. The first virtue is humble. It's really centered around uh, humility. I think it's probably the easiest one to understand. But in practice, it might be hard to really understand what these individuals or people that exude this virtue really look like. But you're not, someone who's humble on your team. They're not interested in celebrating their own accolades, their own wins. They're interested in really lifting up the team. They're quick to acknowledge others' accomplishments. They don't have a huge ego. They honestly acknowledge their skills and talents without being boastful, right? We want humble, hungry, smart. We want great people on our team, but they're not boastful, right? They're not kind of um, over expressing pride and those types of things. They're not afraid to admit something when they're wrong. And I really think when you look at some of the things that, like, someone who lacks humility in a significant way are really those folks that are going to demand a disproportionate amount of attention on your team, and they're really dangerous to a team's cohesion, to achieving your goals. These people that are humble, they're self-confident, but they're not arrogant. And I think really humility is summed up in this quote by C.S. Lewis of humility isn't thinking less of yourself, but it's thinking of yourself less. And those are the type of people that we need on a high performing team that are going to help us really achieve our goals. The next thing that Patrick brings through the next virtue is hungry, and it's really this inner desire to go above and beyond. Um, and people that are hungry and they want to go above and beyond, they don't need to be pushed to work harder. Um, Maybe sometimes the opposite, right? Like, hey, you're taking on too much, you're doing too many things. But they're self-motivated individuals. They're diligent. They volunteer to fill gaps. They love responsibility. They want to take on more responsibility. They're looking for more ways that they can make an impact and ultimately make a difference. And I think these types of people really start to instill confidence in those around them that, hey, you can count on me. I've got this. And that they have a growth mindset. They're always learning. And if you're humble and you're hungry, one of these things that I always look for is, if you want to join this team and you want to learn and grow and to help others learn and grow, we're going to do great things. And I think that that's someone who's humble. They're teachable. They can teach others. They're hungry. They have this self motivation and this desire to want to be great, and to do great things. And ultimately, that brings a great qualities, a great individual onto your team. The last thing here is smart that Patrick brings forward, the last virtue, or the third one. And he's not talking about intelligence. So this isn't like your tactical stuff, like, oh, you're a great coder, hey, you're really great at accounting, or whatever the case may be, but that it's social skills. And being smart really centers around a few things. But self-awareness, I think, is one of the top things to a high-performing team in any company, is individuals who are self-aware and they know themselves. And when I know more about myself, I can bring a better version of myself to the workplace. I can integrate better with a team, those types of things. They have interpersonal awareness. They're emotionally intelligent. So that's like reading the room, right? That's being able to interact with others on your team, being able to understand, um, you know, when it's the right time to move forward with something or not, or what that looks like. They're great listeners. They communicate well. And ultimately, if you do read the five dysfunctions of a team, they're less likely to bring those things forward. And that's like, you know, the pyramid of five dysfunctions of a team starts on trust. They're not fearful of conflict, or they don't lack commitment. They don't have this avoidance of wanting to be accountable or hold others accountable. But really, this social aspect, these social skills of a team player, is something that's very important. Um, Couple things to look out for is, some people can hide a lack of social skills behind technical know-how or general humble nature. Like, and that's someone who's like very, very good at their job. They're doing that well. They're generally humble, but they lack that ability to meld well with the team. And if you read this book, there's some personas that Patrick goes through, of people that have maybe two of the three virtues, or what that looks like, and some things to look out for. Um, the good thing is though is that based on these virtues, humble, hungry, smart, is that these are things that folks can overcome, right? One of the things that Patrick advocates for is really trying to look even at your existing team, not just to who you're trying to bring on, but the existing team. How are we embodying humble, hungry, smart? What does that look like? And then it's really the business's culture and gives it is the business's culture has an opportunity to support individuals based on where they are or where they're mutually identified. But the last virtue here is smart. So if we look at humble, hungry, and smart as like some attributes, really, what's the hiring the right people is about the process and the interviews and like how do we actually do that? I always start hiring with a certain mindset, and I honestly open a lot of my initial interviews with, the likelihood of you hiring someone onto your team that's going to retire there at your company is slim to none. And really the thought process moves towards like, how do I create an opportunity for this individual that's mutually beneficial for them, for us as a company, and I want to do that as long as I can. Selfishly, I hope that's going to be forever, but
Mhm.
inevitably, that's not going to be the case, and ultimately, at one point, they're gonna move on, right? And we're gonna become their biggest cheerleader at that point. But really, the hiring mindset going into the process for me is all about transparency. Um, and having a culture of transparency from your company that can go through your hiring process to answer those questions, to have that conversational type approach with someone. Career growth is always something that I'm mindful of the mindset. Again, it's about ensuring that we're thinking of others, this other person that's going to join the team, and how we can best meet them where they're at and where they want to go, and how we can do that inside of the business. We want to understand their motivations. So, what are the motivations that an individual has for joining a team? What are, why are they leaving their previous employer, or why, kind of the motivations behind that that they have. But a big thing with the hiring mindset too is like going into it knowing that I want to create conversation. And an interview is all about a conversational approach that you're going to have with someone that's going to give you the best results to use these things I'm going to get into next and humble, hungry, smart as a lens. You're not going to be able to source that stuff out or understand any of that if you don't start creating more of a relationship with this individual, and having that conversational approach. For for us, we always advocate for starting with their story. Donald Miller sums this up as a story is based on what people think is important. So when we live a story, we are telling people around us what we think is important. I always start my first question always on every interview is give me an overview of your personal professional journey and career, but ultimately tell me your story. Like what is your story? And I think when you listen to someone talk about their story, they're going to talk about those things that are important. They're going to talk about things that are significant in their life or in their past career. And that's going to give you an opportunity to really start to weave in, hey, how is the response that I'm receiving lining up with humble, hungry, and smart? Who are the players that they're talking about in the story? You know, is it really centered around them? Is it centered around team? Is it around their family? Is it around life events? What does that look like? But it gives you a good opportunity to start to view their response through the lens of humble, hungry, and smart. And ultimately, your core values would come into this as well, your core values as a business. Interviewing is all about asking to be shown. You don't want to be told what their skills are, and that's all about probing and asking questions that again create conversation. Like, give me an example of this. Tell me about a time when this. I straight up ask folks like, what motivates you? You know, we want questions that allow them that give us that opportunity just to sit back and listen. Let's see what they come up with, the story that they tell, how passionate they are about that story, right? What the all the different things that are involved there are going to give you that opportunity to really start to understand more about someone, and that's ultimately where we're at this stage of the process. A yes or no question, it's never going to give you a window into someone's behavior or their thought patterns or what's important to them. A big thing too is we always want to, when we interview someone, we want to have them paint a picture of their future too, right? When we ask these questions, is we want to understand, hey, where do you see yourself in a year? Like, define success for me in a year from now. What does that look like, with or without this role? What are the things that you want to achieve and accomplish in your professional journey, in your career, those types of things. But it's all about, again, giving the candidate opportunities to tell a story, and using that as an opportunity for you to understand, how do our core values and humble, hungry, and smart, those things that we're looking for, fit into that narrative that they're saying. But ultimately, asking the right questions is going to give you a more complete picture of a candidate. As I've been mentioned, we always want to look for our core values, because ultimately your business's core values are going to shape the bar of a contributing member of your team, right? I, it'd be very hard to have a member on your team that doesn't believe in a core value of your business and be a high contributing member of the team. So we always want to be looking for that. And again, when I'm hearing those stories from a candidate, I use that as an opportunity to try to relate their response to a core value. So when they give me a story, I'll say, hey, that relates to, growth mindset or craft, and this is kind of how we view that here at Headway, and this is how, I see that in your story. But it starts to create a conversation around the value itself, and then a lot of times the candidate then can, yeah, this is how I feel like I relate to that. That's something that I'm striving for. And we'll get a little bit more into like what core values are and what they are not. But that's ultimately something that I'm doing in this interview process, as well as through these stories, is I want to interject the business's core values in there in a way that we can have a conversation around those core values to see how that resonates with the candidate, and to ensure that we have some alignment there, that they believe in these core values as much as we do. The next thing that we do, is assessments. Now, before we even, I know there's a lot of text on this slide, but before we even get into what assessments are, when you bring this up to a candidate, the general nature is going to be some standoff reaction, like, oh no, I'm going to be defined on a piece of paper. But I always pitch assessments as they don't define who you are or who you'll always ever be. They're a starting point for a conversation around where you see yourself, where the assessment sees you, and ultimately where we can mutually align on where are those areas of growth. But ultimately, when we go through the assessment process go through assessments in the interview process, we're ultimately looking for, where is someone now, where do they see themselves, and how is the business best, how is the business set up to support this individual in their growth in these areas. So two big assessments for us that we do in the interviewing process, are Colby, and a Colby assessment is really identifying your mode of operations, like how you think, what that looks like. So for example, my Colby comes out that I'm a high fact finder, and what that means is I'm going to, do a ton of research. I'm going to build my confidence in a specific way before I move forward. So if you said, for example, Eric, go buy a pair of headphones. I'm going to do a bunch of research. I'm going to look at all the YouTube reviews. I'm going to find the best thing, and then I'm going to go and once my confidence gets to a certain point, I'm gonna go ahead and make that purchase. If you gave that choice to someone else, they might just go straight to Target and buy something off the rack and call it good, right? But we think in different ways, and Colby is a way for us to understand that a bit, because the dynamic of our teams, when we think about building a team that's going to facilitate, and achieve a goal together, we need a good mixture of folks that think in different ways, that have that diverse thinking, in order to, really achieve the best result. The next thing, which is super important here that we're getting into with the SMART aspect of, the ideal team player, is an EQI, or an emotional intelligence, assessment. And that's giving, again, an opportunity for the candidate to rumble with the results, like, I feel like I'm a little bit better in these areas than what it said, or, I said this. But again, you're facilitating a conversation around where they view themselves, where the assessment's viewed. We always do a debrief on these, so it's a conversation with the results. But ultimately, what we're trying to understand as a business is between the assessment and your the candidate's feedback and response to the assessment, are we equipped to best support you on your journey of growing in these areas? And that's ultimately how we use assessments as this healthy conversation. But again, these the assessments too are really hinge on self-awareness. That when I take an assessment on my own, like not even which I do outside of just a hiring process, it's really me taking that opportunity to be like, okay, this is what the results say. Did it get me? Did it not get? Do I feel like it didn't get me? But ultimately, I've learned more about myself in that process because I'm framing my mind around a specific area. So assessments are important. The next thing are working with you. So we always create an opportunity. I'm not a fan of Headway's a technological company in nature, so let's just use development as an example. I'm not a fan of like a high stress, high pressure type of come in and whiteboard something out, or give someone some complex riddle or something that we want them to solve, right? We want a real world perspective of what it's like to work with someone. And in the interviewing process, there's ways that we can do that. For us at Headway, we do paid activities. So essentially, once you get to a certain point in the interviewing process, we value the individual, we value their time, so we want to pay them to do an exercise with our team. The team is who they're going to be working with, so we want the team to be involved in what this looks like. We create a test project. So on the design side of things, for us, we do what's called a day of design. So it's a full day of a paid engagement with Headway on a fictitious project for us to get a feel of what it's like to work with an individual. Hey, we're going to do a kickoff. We're going to allow you to separate, go do some work for a few hours, come back, ask some questions, show us kind of the halfway mark, do maybe a, a a pitch or a presentation at the end, things like that. So whatever that looks like in your business, but trying to create those opportunities of giving someone a real world chance to show you what it's like to work with them, and that gives them an understanding of what it's like to work with the business. It gives you an understanding of what it's like to work with the individual, whatever that may look like. Sometimes on the development side for us, that's a take-home exam. We don't want to do again. We're not in favor of like, hey, let's watch you code this whole thing and be under high stress. It's like, hey, we're going to give you a task, go do it and bring it back, and then just show us what you came up with, something like that. That we'll do in the hiring process. But again, it needs to have a established structure. It needs to have clear goals so that the candidate understands and they're not fretting over, not knowing what you're expecting. But ultimately, you need to involve members of your team. A big stage for us is a team fit interview. And again, we value our team, we value the feedback. They're ultimately the ones that are going to be working with this individual. So we do a team fit interview, and a lot of times the candidate sees value in a team fit interview too, which it can be daunting at first, right? Like, hey, I'm going to meet 5 people now, and going to feel like this, you know, getting interrogated or something like that. But again, we prep the team on being conversational, and the candidate sees value in it because they view it as an unbiased approach to getting answers. And I mean, we encourage the candidates to ask anyone on our team like, you really like working here? Is this does what I heard in this initial interview process, does it add up? Like, is this really the truth? Try to and a lot of candidates use that as an opportunity to really dig under the surface as well, because they feel maybe a little bit more comfortable in that, or at this stage of the process, they've met enough people, they've talked to us, they've done a lot of stuff in our hiring process, but it gives them that opportunity to meet members of the team, for them to meet them, and then that ultimately is a big deciding factor of an offer for us, is how well does the team view the the work that they have done with the candidate. The team fit interview in and of itself is a big indicator for us of, is this going to be a good fit to move forward and extend an offer. So just to summarize, like, hiring the right people is about framing the right mindset, mutually beneficial, right? We value this person. We want to create a mutually beneficial opportunity. We want to frame ourselves around transparency, around conversations. We want to start with their story. We want to have interview questions that create conversation, that allow them to. We want to be great listeners, and we want to use that as an opportunity to um, vet their responses and their stories through the lenses that really add up to our team's ideal player, which is humble, hungry, and smart, plus our core values. Um, we want to leverage assessments as tools. These are tools that help us again have another conversation, but are a little bit more um, poignant the in exactly what we're um, assessing or supporting and ensuring we have the right structures in place. And you want to involve your team. We never want to have the team meeting, understanding, hey, here's new candidate A, and good luck. Their first day is tomorrow, and here you go, right? We want the team to be involved in that process because ultimately it's a member of their team that they're going to be working with day in and day out. And we feel like at Headway, the combination of these things in our hiring process has really helped us avoid the wrong hire more often than we would have otherwise without a process like this. And it gives us a good opportunity to identify those yellow flags or cautionary things that we get to rumble on internally before we would move forward, but ultimately brings people on the team that have been great contributing members and help us maintain a good culture even through periods of high growth.
When we talk about culture, when we talk about designing a culture that's intentional, that's engaging, that, a culture around caring for people, a huge part of that is getting people in the right seats, getting the right people on the team. I love the Jim Collins illustration of, get the right people on the bus. And this idea of getting people right seats, right fit, and getting them doing the right things really comes down to designing the right culture. And so I want to talk for a second about uh, what we call a culture equation. And a culture equation really is this: your values, your core values, plus the habits that you have as a
Can you hear
company
me now?
equal. Yes, we can hear you now, Scott.
Sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt you, but I didn't want to. You can keep going if you want, but I did have a quick question about the
Yeah,
other.
go ahead. Ask the question.
Yeah, sorry, my mic was actually. I've been setting up my studio a little differently, and my mic was actually unplugged, so that
No
explains.
worries.
So hey, here's the question. So you guys were talking about once they're a candidate's far enough along in the process, you're bringing them in with the team to work on kind of a pseudo project or something. How do you find the time to pull away the team to do that? I mean, how do you structure that in a way that makes sense for everybody? Because obviously, I think it's critical to involve the team, but in a practical sense, how do you, if you're doing a whole day of like, hey, let's interact and try things, is there any kind of process behind that?
Yeah, I mean the team fit interview itself is more of like, hey, let's schedule an hour and a half, and usually that is an hour with the candidate, a half hour debrief or 45, 15, whatever that might look like for you. For the full day, that's structured in a way where ultimately the team is involved, and it's usually so let's use design as an example. It would be maybe the head of design and design leadership would initially kick that off in the morning with a candidate, and then we would support them through, let's say, Slack. We usually create a Slack channel for the candidate, so then any questions that they have as they're working, so it's limited in the morning, it kicks it off, and then different members of the team can be involved throughout the day in different chunks. So it's not like we're pairing with the person all day, or hey, we're gonna hang out with them all day. It's kind of structuring it up, and obviously we have enough of an advance notice to be like, hey, next Friday we're going to do a day of design with this person. We're going to kick off at 8. We're going to have these 3 meetings, and then we kind of just structure things that way and ensure that the team can be available based on who needs to be there for the particular exercise.
That's awesome. I really like that idea of doing some paid time with a potential candidate. That's great. So thanks for sharing that.
Yeah, you
Yeah.
get a ton of information about them and what the fit is going to be like with that person when you do that. So it's good. Great question, Scott. And another question from Keith about preferred site sources, methods for the best applicants. Keith, I think it depends on your industry and what you're kind of looking for. We use a tool called Breezy, and it is an applicant tracking system basically, but it has a lot of integrations with job posting sites that you can you can utilize based on your industry and the type of candidate that you're looking for. So, if you're looking for a developer, they've got some great sites that they'll integrate in and push your job out to developers or designers or, HR people. So it really kind of depends on what you're looking for. And I also have found a lot of luck with LinkedIn. I think that's right now one of the best tools out there for recruiting. Scott, the tool is Breezy. Eric put it in there. Yeah.
Breezy.hr. I just did
Yep.
it.
Yes. Yep. Yeah, that's
Yep.
it.
Okay. Cool. Thanks.
Yeah, great questions, everyone. I'm gonna jump to talking about this culture equation because I think it's such an important component, not only to who we're hiring, but how do we maintain an engaging culture for our team. I think the worst thing that we can do is recruit a great candidate and then have them enter a toxic culture or a culture that we're not paying attention to. And what I have learned over, the last 20 so years of being in leadership, if we are not actively working on culture, our internal team culture will actively be working against us. Culture always defaults to the worst behaviors that we allow on our teams. And so, when we talk about core values, it's interesting. In my work, I have never come across a company that did not have core values. 100% of the companies we have ever worked with have core values, but less than 10% of those organizations have actually operationalized those core values. Core values are who we say we are. They're the covenant in the chaos. They're the riverbank that keeps the river in check. So in Nashville, we have 100-year flood like every 2 to 3 years. And there's this quiet, sleepy river that it's more of a stream most of the time that goes through our town. And when we get one of these 100-year floods, literally the riverbanks cannot keep the river in check. And those are our core values. They're not just fancy banners or a mural that we have on the wall. They define who we are when we are, they define who we are. They describe who we are when we're at our best. They're a filter that we use to make decisions by. As Eric said, we hire with them, we fire by our core values. Our core values should be, who we say we are. They're not aspirational. They are the other thing that I think is really important when it comes to core values is in Patrick Lencioni talks about this. They're not aspirational. That's a values trap, who we wish we were. They're not permission to play values, which is just the lowest bar. When I see things like trustworthy on core values, I'm like, well, yes, and that should just be permission to play, right? Like I expect you to do what you say you're going to do. I expect you to show up at work and not steal from the business. Or accidental values. They might have been true at one point in the past or true of just the founder, but maybe they're not true today. So you've got to make sure they're not aspirational, they're not permission to play, they're not accidental. They are who we say we are. In the second part, the third component of our culture equation is what we hope our culture is. If our values plus habits equal culture, the culture is really the outcome of who we say we are, our values, and living them out together, which is our organizational habits. I like to think, when you're describing your culture equation, your culture really should be, if you were reading the best Glassdoor review about your company, what do you hope it says? If you had a key employee that you wish you could clone and they were describing the positive attributes of working with or for you, what do you hope that they would say? And then we back into our org habits. And again, our organizational habits are the things that we do together. So if values are who we say we are, our organizational habits are what we invest our time, our energy, our money behind, and our values plus our habits equal our culture. Should equal those things that, perfect Glassdoor review. And Eric, on slide 27, we've got sort of this mapped out. So when we do this work with the team, this is sort of a sample. of what your values equation as a company could look like. Values, who we say we are. Here's this company's values. We assume positive intent. We'll figure it out. Everybody makes the coffee. Our success is my success. Their habits, the things that they did together, they give a shit. They learn from experiments. They have consistent communication with one another. They challenge each other. They recognize great work. And then their culture, again, the values plus those habits being lived out equals a collaborative culture, an empowering culture, a fun culture, a curious culture. So here's sort of a sample of the work that I hope you will do for your company, for your team, because here we now have an equation for intentionality behind our culture. So I'll pause. Eric, maybe talk about how Headway has lived out this values equation. We've done a lot of work over the years with our values, our habits, and really intentionality around culture.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean the big thing for us, like what Zach was getting into, is things for us start as what our core values are and what they're not, and kind of that distinction between permission to play and as Zach mentioned, trustworthy or being honest. Something like that is just an expectation. Without it, we're just not even going to be able to work together. And that's really what a permission to play value is saying, if you don't have this value, you can't join the team or be on the team. And that's kind of how I view permission to play. And when we went to create our core values, we really wanted to create those things that we are striving for, that we maybe not always get right, but these are ultimately the things that we want to be known for, as a company. And I've been in a lot of different boardrooms where you see the picturesque landscape and it says like excellence or things like that. And the expectation is that the business is embodying um, those qualities. But in actuality, who knows. So kind of taking it off of there to the things that we can apply in our everyday life, for Headway. And I have some blog posts and things like that about this that you could look at. But really, our values as a business were growth mindset, but then going beyond that to look at teachable, teach others. And it's really this concept that's always stuck with me of a teachable heart. And I kind of touched on this in the beginning, but if you want to join Headway to learn and grow and to help others learn and grow, we're going to do some great things. Like that gets me excited. And embodying that teachability and having that teachable heart is something that's really important to being a member of the team. People focused, I think it goes without saying, Startup Wisconsin is a variant of this, but it's really this focus on the people on the team, our clients, our community, valuing their perspectives, valuing the diversity there, understanding that, kind of bringing that forward, as we want to be people that are known for being people focused, that and valuing others. Um, self motivation is a core value of Headway, and it really goes two ways. On the surface, it's like, okay, yeah, let's be self motivated, but for me, it's about creating that culture of empowerment in the organization, that someone can be self motivated, right? That, hey, if you see something wrong, you can just go ahead and fix it, and there's no you know uh, I don't know, pyramid structure to climb in order to do things, lack of a better term there. But self-motivation is about giving someone that permission and creating the culture inside your organization that says, hey, if you see something wrong, go ahead and address it, go fix it,
Mm.
and be self-motivated. A core value of Headway is humility. We touched on this even with humble, hungry, and smart. Um, for me, it cascades into this concept of servant leadership and really serving others. We want the team to be humble, to embody that. We want to be servant leaders in our community, for our clients, with each other, is really how we can serve, and ultimately ensuring that everyone is heard. Like every voice is heard. The next thing for us is craft, and we always kind of phrase this as intentional practice, but craft is more, for us, is a there's a lot of people on Headway for whatever reason that have been in a band, and to be a musician, there's a lot of work that goes on behind closed doors. We just don't get on stage and do the best solo you've ever heard or sing the best notes or whatever the case may be. There's been a lot of work behind the scenes, and embodying that craft for us allows us to um, deliver the highest value thing that we can within the given context and constraints of an engagement, which they always have a context or a constraint, right? Budget, time, whatever the case may be. But if we've really focused on our craft and we become experts in specific areas, it allows us to deliver a higher level of value within those constraints, based on our knowledge and experience. So craft is a big part of that. But our values kind of come into this and have helped us really shape the culture of empowerment, being collaborative, focusing on the community, ensuring that we're creating opportunities for everyone to be involved in specific areas, valuing everyone's voice in what we do next and what that looks like. Trying not to be looking through those values, it would be hard for us to be a tablet from the mountain type approach, and it's more of involving the team as a whole. Hopefully that answers a little bit for you, Zach.
That's good. Thanks, Eric. And a big part of living out our values and our culture is, how does this happen individually, right? We, can't just say our values are these things and our habits are these things. We really have to then say, how is this going to be lived out for every person on the team? And so we like to say everyone on the team should have a healthy fit. And really, healthy fit is right seat and right person. It's really the equation that we hire by, we fire by, we review, we reward, we promote people. And an individual's healthy fit is really a conversation and a template for regular coaching conversations and regular points of evaluation. Is this person the right seat for the bus, the Jim Collins bus? And are they in the right seat on this bus? Are they in the best and highest use of the contribution that they bring? And so FIT is an acronym for fuel, impact, and timely. And so when we look at fuel, the question that we're asking, is this person in a position that fuels their unique identity? Eric talked about Kolbe earlier, and Kolbe is a great tool for helping assess this, right? If I'm a high fact finder and I'm a high, I'm a high quick start, which means I love innovation, I love change, I love things being different. And I'm in a role that, I'm not allowed to think about change. I'm in a, just carry out this process over and over and over again. It probably is not going to be something that is motivating or it is going to bring out my best long term. And so as we grow as an organization, are we putting people in the right seats for the unique identity and unique genius that they bring to the team? Secondly, we're looking at impact. Can this person create significant positive impact in their role on the team? And this is a yes or no question. Can this person create significant impact in their role? So does it, fuel their unique identity? Is the role that they're in, are they able to create significant positive impact in the role? And then lastly, on the timely front, is the contribution that they're making timely for the company? And is their trajectory, meaning is their emotional intelligence, their cognitive intelligence, their experience, their expertise, their education, is it a timely fit for where we are going as a company? And, this comes back to making sure that we have a strong plan, right? Making sure that we have and understand what our vision is, where we're going, how we're going to get there. I'm actually teaching a session on that tomorrow, where you'll walk away with a one-page strategic plan for your business. But this is where we can answer that timely question. If we're going here and this person's, trajectory is kind of over here, do we have a wrong fit? And, clear is kind, unclear is unkind, better to have the conversation. And so, this comes down to, when we talk about healthy fit, fuel, impact, and timely, these are conversations that we have on a quarterly basis. And we have a template up here for how we have these quarterly conversations. And the quarterly conversation is really where we answer those questions, where we say, yes, I see this position fueling your unique identity. What do you think about it? And we're going to rate them on all of our core values. And really, this should be one of the rubrics in which we use to evaluate, that we promote, that maybe we say, I don't know if this is the right position for you. And, like Eric said, this may not be the job that you're going to have for the rest of your life. And maybe there's another job that's going to be better for you. That's okay. I can care for you. And I can challenge you all at the same time. And so every quarter, we recommend answering those three questions as a leadership team for every person on your team. Does the position fuel their unique identity? Is the impact that they're making the right impact? Is it a timely impact? And then on a scale of 1 to 4, how well is this person embodying and living out our core values? And we ask them to rate themselves on this as well. And that is the precipice for a really healthy conversation that we're able to have with team members. And, so as you look at this is really we have a version of this for the company, but each person on the team should have, we really encourage you working through this with every person, that they understand, the highest and best use of their craft, their passion, their unique genius. Where do they want to be growing personally, professionally? What's the current focus of that growth over the next 90 days? And they understand, sort of that onlyness statement up there in the top left-hand corner. What are they able to bring to this team that no one else is able to bring? And how, as your leader, am I helping you bring your best every single day? Because we know through, research, neuro research, that when we are living out our unique ability, when we are living out our unique genius, we bring motivation, we bring joy, there's fulfillment in the role. There's sort of this unbounding mental energy and emotional energy that we bring. So when we talk about this idea of quarterly conversations, this is really where the rubber meets the road in helping people on an individual basis live out the values, live out the culture that we're trying to create, and making sure we're having disciplined, regular conversations about performance, about how we're living those core values out. And we have just a quick agenda on how we recommend running those conversations, checking in with the person. How are they doing? How are they feeling? The mission in Hedgehog, I want to start getting stories about how they feel like they're living that out. Where are they growing? What growth do we need to challenge in them when it comes to their contribution? How do they see their contribution? Areas that I'm seeing as maybe their, leader, in ways that they can grow and develop in their contribution as, an individual. So this is just a regular performance conversation, a regular conversation we're having, not every year, but every quarter. Again, clear is kind, unclear is unkind. And then lastly, we recommend having regular one-on-ones. Every person on your team deserves to have a one-on-one with their leader on at least an every other week basis. And that can be simple. 2 questions. What are you working on, and how can I support you? But we want to make sure that we are, clear, we're kind. There's a great book called Radical Candor from Kim Scott. Brene Brown wrote Dare to Lead, another great book for really guiding those kind of conversations. But at the end of the day, when we talk about culture, when we talk about people, we want to make sure that we are, we really want to make sure that we're caring for them well. Whether they're going to be with us for a year or 2 or 20 years, I want to make sure that I'm caring for them, I'm challenging them, and they are equipped to live out their unique genius. They're equipped to live out their unique ability on the team and be at their best. I'm giving them what they need to be the best version of themselves. And obviously a lot is on them to do that as well, but I'm creating that environment for them. So we're going to end with Q&A. I have a slide up here that or a QR code up here. If we always offer a free coaching session if any of this stuff is you're feeling like I'm a little stuck or I need some help on working these things out. Obviously, this is work we do, but we'd love to offer that free coaching session for you. So Eric will put that QR code up there, but we will stop now. We've got about 5 minutes left. What questions do you have for us?
If no one else is asking, I've got one.
Awesome. Thanks, Scott.
Yeah. So what I find is that smaller organizations, startups, kind of new organizations, they tend to be more culture focused, partly because, they're thinking about it. I mean, obviously it depends, sometimes they're also super busy trying to get everything moving. But the point is, when I see larger organizations, you definitely see a degradation in culture sometimes and I think the main area that I see the biggest problem is that the people on the team feel like they're giving to the company, but they're not necessarily, they don't matter as much in reverse. How do you help companies as they transition from small to larger to maintain that healthy culture so they don't lose that? They don't end up in the situation where it's kind of like almost like you get a lot of zombie cultures, I guess, as you see, and it can happen in small organizations too, but you see, you know what I'm talking about? How do you prevent that?
Yeah, that's a great question. And I think it comes down to really making sure our habits are things that we are that are operationalized. We're spending time on them. We're spending money. We're intentional about those behaviors because that's how we live out the core value. And that, as a leadership team too, we are holding ourselves accountable to them. We're holding our team accountable to them. I don't think you can talk about this stuff too much. I've never heard an organization say like, oh my gosh, our leaders talk about our core values too often, or they talk about, why we're here and the work, why our work is important too much. I don't think as leaders can communicate that enough. And if we, again, are not holding ourselves, holding one another, holding our team accountable, accountability doesn't just happen on its own. The more willing a leader is to hold people accountable, to hold themselves accountable, the more willing our people are going to be to hold one another accountable. Sort of leadership is the rise and fall of accountability, I think, on a team, and especially when it comes to living out core values. Scott, good question.
Yeah. And if you look at a lot of what Zach was sharing there with one-on-ones, with healthy fit and all of that, it's right where, and Zach was talking a lot about caring for an individual, but it's about forming a relationship and forming a meaningful relationship with someone, right?
Yeah.
We're going to talk to them often, and we're going to make sure that we're meeting and supporting and doing what we can as a business to support that individual in their desires, their unique ability, and whatever that looks like. And I feel like as companies grow and they scale really fast, they they lose that component of ensuring that they're creating relationships with everyone within the organization. And I think it goes back to how many people one person can effectively lead. And I can't effectively hold relationships, one-on-ones, healthy fit conversations with 25 people. It's impossible, right? And I think it's creating those structures in place where you have the right structures on a team where you're able to create those, you're able to lead well. And I can't lead well with a ton of people. I can only, 6 to 8 people or something like that. I forget where that was, but there's like an effective structure there of where I can really feasibly create a relationship and truly care for individuals and support them in their needs on a day-to-day basis, and ensuring that we don't breach that threshold, because that's where I feel like you see the culture degrade over time, is that the company's grown too fast. We don't have the time to have all the one-on-ones. We don't have the time to form a relationship, and it's kind of like, I just need you to get this thing done. And then you feel like a cog in a wheel, then you feel like you're not supported, and I feel like then you can kind of get a little bit out of hand.
Yeah, it's good. Well, we are at
You know
time.
what I was going to say? You mentioned something I thought was really interesting there, because I feel like that is actually a big piece of it, where you get that one directional communication. Because when you're doing what you're talking about, there's the two-way communication, there's interaction, there's like, you can recalibrate, you can check in, you can learn, you can connect, and if there's issues, you can find them. But when when people get overwhelmed or the company gets overwhelmed because, like you said, growth or whatever, or they get too bureaucratic or whatever, then they end up with a situation where it's kind of like leadership is just talking down to everyone, and there's no feedback, so they don't feel that same sense of participation. And I think that's a huge area where that culture can start to shift. So thanks for saying it that way. It's pretty insightful. Thank you.
It's good. Well, thank you all. I know we're at time. Please reach out if you've got questions. If there's anything Eric or I can do to help you or support you. Glad that you were here. Thanks for being in an early morning session. It was good to be with you all today.
Yeah, thanks everyone. Appreciate
Thanks,
it.
everyone. Have a good rest of the day.